Dad finds solution to 8-year-old daughter's school fears by checking her backpack. When Mike noticed his daughter Taylor repeatedly coming home in tears, he sensed that something was seriously amiss. Despite Taylor being evasive when questioned about the source of her unhappiness, Mike decided to devise a plan to uncover the root cause. Determined to understand and address the issue, he was prepared to unravel the mystery regardless of the challenges. Mike, deeply overprotective of his 8-year-old daughter Taylor, held her in high regard as his pride and joy. Observing her profound unhappiness, Mike felt a strong need to understand the source of her troubles. However, Taylor's fear prevented her from opening up, causing both Mike and his wife Tiffany to grow increasingly concerned for her well-being. Before long, Mike devised an ideal plan to support and assist his troubled daughter. Taylor, an energetic and lively 8-year-old, found joy in riding her bicycle and playing outdoors, and she cherished her time at school, where she had numerous friends. Her academic prowess made her a favorite with her teacher, and she was an exemplary student in every way. However, a sudden shift occurred when Taylor expressed her reluctance to continue attending school. The beginning of the routine unfolded when Mike, as usual, picked up Taylor from school, an event he eagerly looked forward to every day. Witnessing his little girl waving goodbye to her friends and hurrying into the family car was a highlight for him. To add a touch of extra joy to their journey home, Mike often took a detour through the McDonald's drive-thru to indulge Taylor in her favorite treat, an Oreo McFlurry. However, on a specific day, Mike observed Taylor rushing to the car without exchanging waves with her friends. As she entered the car, her expression was noticeably serious. "Hey, Pumpkin, is everything all right? How was your day?" he inquired, but Taylor simply reclined in her seat and fastened her seatbelt. Undeterred, Mike proceeded to drive directly to McDonald's for their customary treat. While driving home, Mike sensed that something was troubling his daughter, yet she remained silent, and he refrained from pushing her to share. Upon reaching home, Taylor headed straight to her room. Hours passed, and when Mike eventually went to check on her, he discovered her sitting there, having been in tears. "What's wrong, sweetie? Do you want to talk about it? What's bothering you?" Mike attempted to connect with his daughter, but she appeared unwilling to discuss the matter. Choosing not to press the issue, Mike decided to let it be, thinking that tomorrow would bring a better day. Getting Taylor out of bed for school the next morning proved to be a challenge. She concocted various excuses in an attempt to stay at home, but Mike and Tiffany remained unconvinced. Eventually, they insisted, and Taylor reluctantly got dressed and prepared to leave. Sulking throughout the journey to school, Taylor remained unresponsive despite Tiffany's attempts. Tiffany's concern heightened when Taylor exited the car without even a goodbye kiss. The day took a turn for the worse for the Reeves family as Taylor's condition didn't improve. In fact, it seemed to worsen. Observing his daughter's persistently sour mood as she entered the car, Mike tried to lighten the atmosphere. "Hey, should we go get some yummy ice creams? I'm sure it will make you feel better," he suggested. However, Taylor had different intentions. "No, I just want to go home," she stated. Mike complied, driving home in silence, feeling uncertain about what to do. With their daughter still keeping the issue to herself, Mike decided to have another conversation with her that evening. It was time to uncover what was happening at school. Later that evening, following dinner, Mike and Tiffany joined Taylor in her room for a heart-to-heart conversation, eager to discover the source of their daughter's distress. "Hey Taylor, I've noticed that you've been really unhappy lately. Is there something going on at school that you're not telling us about?" Mike inquired gently. Taylor fidgeted with her stuffed bunny, avoiding eye contact. "I don't want to go to school, Daddy. I just don't like it anymore," she finally whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Mike's heart sank as he sensed there was more to the story, but he chose not to pressure Taylor. Instead, he opted for a different approach. "Sweetie, I understand that sometimes school can be tough, but I'm here to help you. You know you can tell me anything, right?" Mike reassured her. Taylor's lower lip trembled as she nodded. "I just don't want to go anymore. Can we move so that I can go to a different school, please, Daddy?" Mike and Tiffany exchanged glances, acknowledging the impracticality of moving. This time, Tiffany took the lead. "Honey, I know it's difficult, but we can't move. We have to address your problem so that you can be happy again." Upon hearing this, Taylor became visibly upset. She no longer wanted to engage in conversation with her parents. As the days passed, Mike couldn't ignore the nagging sense that something was profoundly amiss. He observed Taylor closely, witnessing her increasing reluctance to leave the house, a diminished appetite, and a general withdrawal from activities she once found joy in. It became evident that Taylor was grappling with concealed fears, leaving Mike and Tiffany feeling utterly helpless. Mike chose to take a day off from work to be at home with Taylor, hoping that extended time together might prompt her to share what was bothering her. The day off from school seemed to have a positive impact on his daughter. They even shared a few smiles as they prepared snacks together. However, Mike remained uncertain about whether he could get her to open up about her concerns. Seizing another opportunity, he tried once again. Pumpkin, do you want to tell Daddy why you're so unhappy at school? I promise I won't be angry. I just want to help you. In an instant, it seemed as if Taylor had closed up, growing visibly nervous. Mike could sense the fear that had taken hold of her, and his sole desire was to provide the help she needed. At this juncture, Mike felt a sense of helplessness as Taylor retreated to her room, likely to shed tears. Despite his best efforts, even taking a day off from work to be with her failed to alleviate the situation. Realizing the urgency of the matter, Mike knew he had to come up with a viable solution. His daughter was clearly in desperate need of help, and delaying the resolution only increased the risk of the situation worsening. In the interim, he racked his brain for a way to assist her. Just as he felt he was close to a breakthrough, a call from school the next day revealed that she had finally reached a breaking point. Mike had recently devised a plan when he received a phone call. Ordinarily, he wouldn't answer calls during work, but the distinct number caught his attention. It was from Taylor's school. Intuitively, he sensed that the news couldn't be good. Answering the phone, he listened to the principal on the other end of the receiver. What they conveyed prompted Mike to hastily head to his car. Upon hearing the distressing news over the phone, Mike felt an urgent need to rush to the school. Unable to believe what he had heard, he knew he had to be there for his daughter, and time was of the essence. Driving as fast as he could, Mike managed to reach the school in just 10 minutes, disregarding parking details. Hurrying inside, he located his beloved daughter sitting in the principal's office, having experienced a breakdown. Mike was taken aback by the state in which he found his daughter, her face marked with tears as she gazed down at her shoes. Turning his attention to the principal, he inquired what had happened. The principal shook his head. Explaining the situation, the principal shared that Taylor had experienced a breakdown in class. It was evident that something was deeply troubling the little girl, but she remained unwilling to confide in anyone about the source of her distress. The principal assured Mike that Taylor needed some rest and would be fine. However, Mike silently disagreed, sensing that there was more to her distress than mere discomfort. He was convinced that something deeper was bothering her. Recognizing that he had to uncover the truth if the school staff wasn't going to, Mike understood the necessity of a well-thought-out plan. In a moment of inspiration, a light bulb went off in Mike's head. What if there was a way to be present for Taylor at school without physically being there? He pondered. With a clear idea in mind, he headed down to the garage where he stored his usual supplies. Hoping that his plan would prove successful, Mike set out to put it into action. Being proficient with tools, Mike had acquired a range of skills from his father, spanning from using a screwdriver to operating a belt sander. This expertise paved the way for a unique plan that he could implement. Patiently awaiting the opportune moment, Mike knew that when it arrived, he would be able to craft something using his skills that would unveil the truth for what it was. Mike had his suspicions of what was happening to his daughter. He just wished he could have gotten the truth out of her without having to go to such terrible lengths to find out for himself. He knew what he was doing wasn't the most legal thing, but he didn't plan on getting caught by anyone. If his wife found out what he was doing before he found any evidence, then he would have been condemned. Mike sat in his workshop, looking at the plan he had laid out, and shook his head. He didn't want it to come to this. He got up and decided to give the school one last chance to tell him what was going on. He went to bed, knowing that in the morning he would march over to the school and meet with the principal whether they wanted to see him or not. Nothing was more powerful than a father's fury. Mike dropped off Taylor at school and drove around the block before parking back at the school. He wouldn't let his daughter know what he was doing. He knew that he'd only embarrass her if he did. He headed straight to the principal's office. He didn't make any kind of appointment. He was going to barge in and see if they could tell him the truth about everything. The principal was surprised to see Mike walking into his office. "You have to make an—" But he cut him off. "Please, I need to talk about Taylor. She didn't just have a bad day. Something's going on." The principal stared at Mike with a sympathetic look on his face. "I understand. I noticed it too, but my hands are unfortunately tied. There's no evidence to point out what's causing her pain. If she won't tell you, then there's nothing we can do," he explained to the father. Mike slammed his fist down on the table as tears formed in his eyes. "Please, you have to do something. It's unacceptable that this is going on with my daughter." The principal seemed torn up with the display Mike was putting on. After a moment of silence, he replied, "I suppose there is something we can do, but it's risky and could get us both in trouble. If you can find any evidence, then theoretically I would have no choice but to help you. The issue is in how you would get that evidence," the principal said, insinuating something sinister. That's when it all clicked in Mike's head. "So if I turn up some evidence no matter how I got it, then you'll help Taylor?" he asked. The principal nodded his head but said that if he was caught, he'd be in big trouble. Mike left the principal's office with a lot on his mind. Now, all he had to do was get evidence for the principal. He felt like a secret agent gathering data that he wasn't supposed to. It was now more riskier than ever. But the principal didn't know that he would have done this anyway if he didn't help him. He'd continue his plan to build something that would help his daughter. He needed that evidence. Mike headed to work and later picked up his daughter from school. She was none the wiser that he had seen the principal and seemed as sad as she normally was. He comforted her, knowing that soon he would find out the truth behind everything. After getting home, he could continue his project. But he'd need a way to capture video. Then it came to him. Fortuitously, a crucial component of his plan was already present in their house. Mike recalled an old GoPro they used during holidays, and he discovered it tucked away in a seldom-used trunk. After dusting off the device, he placed it in his workshop, realizing that the time to piece everything together was drawing near. Mike was on the verge of uncovering the truth. With his device so close to being ready, he stepped back and stared at it in satisfaction. But that's when he heard a mouse-like sound from behind him. "Daddy, I'm tired. Can you read me a bedtime story?" Mike jumped back and saw his daughter in the doorframe, rubbing her eyes and holding her stuffed bunny under her arm. What was he going to do now that he was caught? Mike thought that it was all over. Taylor would notice the contraption and then tell Tiffany. But then he noticed something. She was so tired that she wasn't even looking into the room. "I'll tuck you in and tell you a story," Sweetie said, rushing her out of the room. He locked the door behind him and took her to bed. He kept his promise and read a story to her. He watched her fall into dreamland and kissed her forehead. Now it was time for action. Once Taylor was sound asleep that night, Mike discreetly entered her bedroom to retrieve her school backpack. Carrying it to his work table in the basement, he commenced the execution of his plan. Acknowledging the sneakiness of his approach, Mike understood it was the only way to unravel the mystery. In under an hour, he discreetly affixed a hidden camera to Taylor's backpack without it being noticeable. Wiping his brow, Mike finally surveyed his handiwork. Despite acknowledging its somewhat underhanded nature, he felt a sense of pride in what he had accomplished, a work of genius in his mind. Now, all that remained was to discreetly reintroduce the backpack. Carefully placing it on the rack where Taylor usually left it, Mike hoped that she wouldn't notice any tampering at all. Uncertain of what he would uncover, the father prepared for the revelation that awaited him. The next morning, Taylor displayed her customary reluctance to go to school. However, this time, Mike clung to a small glimmer of hope. He observed as Taylor reluctantly donned her backpack and headed out the door. With a pounding heart, Mike prayed that Taylor wouldn't notice the hidden camera and decide to remove the device from her backpack. The suspense hung in the air as he awaited the outcome of his unconventional plan. Sadly, to get to the bottom of things, Taylor would have to spend one more day miserable. He wished he could tell her that it would all change soon, but he didn't want her to know his plan. Instead, he just had to encourage her. He hated sending her to school, knowing she'd be subjected to whatever was tormenting her, but at least it would be the last time. En route, Mike observed the familiar sadness lingering on her face. The last thing he wanted was for her to experience another breakdown. Upon reaching the school, Mike decided to address her. "Hey, sweetie, you can trust me. I'll be with you the entire time, even if you can't see me." "Okay," he reassured with a smile. Taylor seemed to brighten up a bit as she exited the car. Soon, Mike would uncover the source of her distress. Having dropped Taylor off, Mike realized it would be a while before he could review the day's footage. Despite being at work, he found it challenging to concentrate on his tasks. His thoughts were consumed by concern for his daughter. Was she coping well? All he could anticipate was the end-of-day review of the collected footage. The day seemed to stretch on forever as Mike anxiously waited for the time to fetch Taylor from school. When she finally got into the car, Mike's heart sank as he saw her slumped shoulders and downcast eyes. As per usual, he drove to McDonald's to get her a special after-school treat. She was grateful, but it didn't lift her mood too much. Mike decided to ask his daughter once again how her day had gone. "It felt a little better after you spoke to me in the car. I just imagined you being with me, and things were better." It brought some comfort to Mike, but he needed to know exactly what was upsetting her. Taylor trudged into the house, and Mike didn't have a chance to get to her backpack just yet. It would seem too suspicious. He had to wait until nightfall, when both Tiffany and Taylor were asleep, for him to review the findings of the day. But as more time stretched on, the concerned father thought more about what he had done. Had he crossed a line by installing the camera into her backpack? He knew if he was caught, he'd be in trouble. He second-guessed himself. Was this taking things too far? Then he thought about the way she looked after school every day and the breakdown she had just days ago. He knew the right answer. Then Mike thought back to the pact he had made with the principal. He was anonymously backed by him and had his secret support. Now, he just had to review the evidence and see what was going on. He was worried he'd overreact, or maybe it was something out of his control. Either way, he had to snap out of it. Mike shook off his doubts and soldiered on through the day. It would soon be Taylor's bedtime, and then he could finally take a look at everything as a whole. He took deep breaths to try and calm down. This was finally the time he'd see the truth firsthand. As soon as his wife Tiffany and his daughter Taylor had laid their heads down to sleep, Mike took his chance. He quickly went to Taylor's room to retrieve the backpack with the hidden camera. His hands shook as he walked down to the basement. He sat at his work table and connected the device to his laptop. It was time to see what exactly was going on. All he knew was that this was for his daughter's own good. He played back the footage, his heart pounding even louder in his chest. He watched with bated breath as he watched his daughter's point of view of the whole day. What would he uncover? What he saw on the screen left him horrified and angry. The footage revealed a group of older kids taunting Taylor, making fun of her, and even taking her belongings. It was evident that she was being bullied, and the culprits were caught on camera. Mike shed a tear as he watched his defenseless daughter try to stand up for herself. As Mike watched the footage, a wave of fury washed over him. How could anyone be so cruel to his sweet, innocent daughter? His protective instincts kicked into overdrive, and he knew he had to take immediate action. He thought about his next move, but he would have to trust that his wife wouldn't overreact to his scheme. He hadn't told her about stitching the camera inside of the backpack. Now that he had undeniable proof of what had been making his daughter so sad, he had a decision to make. He wrestled with it over and over again in his mind before making it up. He wanted to show it to someone else before the principal, his wife. Tiffany deserved to know, but he knew it would hurt her to see her daughter in pain. He decided to do the right thing. He showed the footage to Tiffany, who was equally outraged. "We can't let this continue," she said with determination. "We need to talk to the school and put an end to this." His wife didn't hate him for what he did. She admired him for finding out what was really going on with his daughter. They would now fight a combined front to make sure the school did something about it. The couple thought about what they could do now that they knew the truth. In Tiffany's mind, there was only one thing that they could do now. She wanted them to go straight to their daughter's school. Mike agreed, and they set up a meeting with the principal. This time he would have to take him seriously now that he had evidence to prove everything he had suspected. But what would the principal say? While Tiffany seemed to be wondering what the principal would do, Mike already knew what was going to happen. He wasn't in the dark like she was. He just hoped the principal would keep to his word and help his daughter. The principal must have known why they were going to see him. In the meantime, Mike decided to check on his bundle of joy. He wanted to see how she was feeling and if she was okay. Now that he had context, he could help her properly. He went into her room and told her that no one would ever bully her again. He explained that he was going to see the principal about it, and she smiled hopefully. He had to make sure the principal stuck to his word. The next day, Mike and Tiffany marched into the school principal's office, armed with the evidence from the hidden camera. The principal, Mr. Thompson, watched the footage with a mix of shock and concern. "I had no idea this was happening," he admitted, clearly taken aback. "I promise you, we will address this immediately. No student should ever feel unsafe or bullied in our school." Mike and Tiffany left the meeting cautiously optimistic that the situation would be resolved. They promised to do everything in their power to end the bullying once and for all. They felt horrible that they hadn't done something sooner. Taylor had been suffering for so long, but that would soon change, and they knew, however, that their battle was far from over. In the days that followed, tensions at the school escalated. The bullies were confronted and disciplined, but their anger seemed to intensify. Taylor's already difficult situation grew worse as the bullies retaliated against her for getting them in trouble. Mike and Tiffany watched helplessly as their daughter became even more withdrawn, her fear and anxiety palpable. They knew they had to do something before things spiraled completely out of control. The couple couldn't bear to see their child in such pain and anguish. They could only think of one final solution that would put an end to everything. Mike and Tiffany moved Taylor to a new school, one that assured there were fewer bullies. Taylor took some time to adjust to the new place, but within a few months her mood improved drastically. It seemed like things were finally looking up.